Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. I'm Mark Stein, Thrive founder and your podcast host. We're creating sustainable, inclusive, and multi-generational residential communities. Our mission is to combat the epidemic of isolation, revitalize communities, and help others discover the many benefits of engaged community living by offering unique and ecologically sustainable co-living options. In this podcast series, join us as we discuss co-living, in addition to bringing you interesting people from around the world who are doing cool things to expand your knowledge and satisfy your curiosity. Through this podcast, learn more about our concept and see how Thrive co-living communities will bring together people from all walks of life who want to enjoy the best of independent and group living. To find out more about us, please visit our website at thrivecolivingcommunities.org. Thanks for watching and enjoy the podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. Glad to have you back, and I'm pleased to introduce Ken Kleiber. I was so focused on getting the I in Kleiber right that I put a L in Clint. Ken Kleiber. He is a friend of a friend, and he is homesteading in southern Indiana, near where I have a place in that area. And so my understanding is he has some thoughts and plans about building community. And rather than have a preliminary conversation about it, I just asked him if he'd come right on the podcast and let's meet that way and find out what he's up to and what he's interested in. So Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. This is my first podcast, so I'm pretty excited. And I'm the founder and director of Buck Creek Sanctuary, my place here in southern Indiana. So
great. Well, tell me, let's start with background. Talk a little bit about your journey and the pieces that sort of brought you to this point in time and the place.
Whoa, how far back do you want to go?
Well, maybe hit the high spots. We're both middle-aged, so a detailed history could take 10 hours.
Take a while.
So hit the high spots.
Well, yeah, I'm here at Buck Creek Sanctuary, which is 58 acres in southern Indiana. It's it's all basically forested, and that's how I got the property, because there's farm fields on either side, and then it got sold off from the original farmer a couple of times. And the last time previous to me was some friends of mine, Jeff and Becky, and they started basically what is now Buck Creek Sanctuary. They wanted to do some permaculture things here and get back to the land, and then things didn't work out, and they offered me to take over, so I jumped right in. But my background is I've been a massage therapist for 20 years, body worker, Reiki master, that kind of thing here in Louisville, Kentucky. And previous to that, I lived 10 years in an intentional community, which is what we used to call it. I guess you're calling it co-living these days. It was called Oakwood Farm in central Indiana, outside of Muncie, Indiana. And it was a community of 40 people. And it was multi-generational, several retired couples, a couple of families with young children, several single people, which I was at the time. I was actually dropped out of college to move there in my, like at 20, 21. And lived there 10 years, and eventually started running the organic farm that was part of the community there. And that got me involved in, the alternative lifestyle of community living, and also just getting back to the land. And then eventually moved down to Louisville after that 10 years spout, raised a family, have a daughter, that kind of thing. Now she's often doing her own thing, and I get to do my own thing now, which is basically wanting to get back to the land and create community again on the land. The 10 years was a really special part of my life. And, I felt like I grew up and reconnected to who I really was and connected to the land in a really deep way. So I want to do that again here and invite others to join me. So
very nice. What are the aspects of community that are most important? And I'm hearing two sort of a bifurcated purpose, community and sustainability. And those are also, if I'm hearing correctly, and those are also two pillars of the Thrive concept. So talk a little bit about both and what they mean to you.
Yeah, I think I don't separate them. I really can't just separate them. Almost, it's like community for me is community with the land, with Mother Earth, with all sentient beings, however you want to put it. And so returning to that, because I think all native cultures, all indigenous cultures, which we all come from something, some area that our ancestors were indigenous to and had a relationship with the land that we've lost touch with. And I think for me, there's a yearning to get back to that. And I think that's the motivation behind the sustainability. And, and I've changed, or I come to like the word regenerative, because even sustainability isn't enough at this point, right? We can't sustain where we are because it's already so gone, in lack of a better word.
What we're doing is unsustainable.
Right.
What we're
We need to regenerate that. Yeah, regenerate that connection with the land, regenerate, life on Earth, basically, and the community. So bringing people back in right relationship with the land is really important to me. And I think that's the foundation. And part of that is seeing the land as sacred, seeing ourselves as part of the land. We cannot separate ourselves from the land. We cannot separate ourselves from nature. That is the fundamental flaw to me in human design, human culture, is that we separated ourselves from nature and hold ourselves up above, and then we can abuse it. But when we're in right relationship with it on a equality or on a circle instead of a linear up and down, then we begin to have a relationship again and have a right relationship and find our place with humility, but yet find our power within that humility, the power of creation, the power of regeneration, the ability to regenerate when we're connected with it. Right?
The antithesis goes way back to biblical times. Exert dominion over the earth and subdue it. I think I'm mangling it, but I think that's Old Testament, probably Genesis.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. And who knows how long even before that, before it became that dogmatic, I guess you would say. Yeah.
Talk about the concept of permaculture. And to me, that's an overarching, embracing concept that does include people, relation to the land, and that sort of thing. Talk about where permaculture fits in that for you.
Yeah, so we want to be a permaculture education center here at Buck Creek Sanctuary. That would be part of it. And so permaculture basically just is a design system that follows those principles of building community and having a relationship with the land. I like the definition of it's kind of returning to a right relationship with the land and observing how the water flows on the land, how the sun shines and where it hits, and finding microclimates within our area because of how the water flows, how the sun hits, how the wind it moves across the land, and then the life in the soil. So you're observing the life in the soil. So it's a design system that takes all that into account and more. Right relationship with the animals, with the plants, with the and the overall. For me, the overall principle is diversity. So, and that's kind of how I live my life. The more diverse we can be, in expression of the human soul or our human self to how we create our world. The more diverse it is, the more life it has in it. And so that's the kind of the foundation of permaculture, is to produce life, regenerate life and diversity. And then within that, there is abundance and we get our needs met, right? So we design getting our needs met within the diversity, basically, of
And I
that
think
concept.
diversity also leads to it's not stability, but
resilience, because if something happens, we have another option. There's more than one options, right? Monoculture, you got one option. Something hits the fan, right? You lose the whole crop, or you lose that whole. But if you have diversity, something is not doing good this year, something else is doing great, you know. And so, and the, you know, the whole spectrum, there's probably from not doing good to great, there's something's doing mediocre, etc., you know, all the way through. Again, diversity.
So you're living on 58 acres, I think you said.
Right.
And it's mostly wooded. Is there some cleared space for gardening? And
there's some not cleared enough. I'm finding out as I observe the sun. You know, I was hoping it was enough trees down to be able to grow some annual vegetables, you know, tomatoes and things that need some more high sun. And last year didn't turn out so good. So we did trim some trees back this year, which is really hard to cut trees down. But when you have a lot of them, it's, you know, it's part of the design, is how do you design this is where we're going to have our, you know, annual garden and have some sun. And so we're in the process of designing it and seeing how many trees we need to take down, or, you know, call however you redesign it. So, but it's a small garden at this point. You know, you're just your basic vegetables. We did some nice peas and spinach and kale in the spring, and then now we're into the tomatoes and peppers and eggplant and cabbage and all that sort of thing. So, yeah.
How long have you lived there?
This is just my third year. So the first year I really just kind of sat back and observed, which is another principle of permaculture, is learning how all that flows within the calendar year, right? So learning how the sun hits, how the water flows, before you start designing and reach or just changing things up, right? Because you want to see how that flows on this piece of property and then start from there. So that's part of the permaculture design, is it's an ongoing creation, right? It's as things change and you observe something different, you can have the resilience to make a change in your design, or make a change because you got more information from what you observed, and you have a better relationship, however that works. Yeah.
Right. So what are some of your thoughts around, you want to grow the community? Right now, it's just you living on the property, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And so what are some of your thoughts about how to structure things to draw others to come, assuming you want others to come? I think I heard from our mutual friend Chris that you do want to draw other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole point. I struggle with that because I want to co-create it, right? So it's like, I don't want to have all the answers, but I do have to have a core, you know, design, right? So basically, what I see is, you know, just a few homes, maybe just 2 or 3 homes of co-living. Like this is a pretty small house. It's only 950 square feet. So I mean, maybe 2 people here, would be fine. But, and then building maybe a bigger building with multiple living areas, and also maybe incorporating tiny houses and that type of thing. I want to have a core group of people who kind of really want this to happen, want to live here, want to reestablish connection with the land, and then commitment to being here for a length of time, and then have a more flow, like having younger people who might come in as interns and work for the summer, or we already have a hip camp started here. So we do have campers that come for the weekend, or mostly weekend. Every once in a while, somebody will come for the night. So I don't know if you're familiar with hip camp, but we're on hip camp is Buck Creek Sanctuary in Elizabeth, Indiana. And we got 3 campsites, one right down on the creek, on Buck Creek, which is beautiful, and a couple closer to the parking and barnyard here and in the woods. So, and just, so I want a core group of people who see the value of returning to seeing the land as sacred and seeing a part of that, and then building from there, basically. I think, I really feel like you have to have a principle, or what's the word, a commitment to a something as a group, right, to hold you together. Typically it might be a religion, right? Well, more of, I guess, the commitment to regeneration of the land and having a relationship to the land, I guess, has been the foundation.
And some organize around groups of interest groups like artists, yoga. In fact, there was a yoga retreat center in your general area, and I kept wondering if it was this particular land. I don't think so. Orbis was the name of the group.
Oh, Orbis, yeah, that goes way back. I forget. That's when I first moved here in this area. I think around 2000, I think we were early 2000s, it went out of business, or the woman retired who was running it, and she was quite fabulous. That was a really good start. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think it was close to Louisville. It was close here, but not quite in this area. But yeah.
Okay, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, I do workshops. I mean, yoga. I personally do yoga. I personally would love to have artists involved. One of the things we're also connected with is the United Plant Savers out of Ohio, and we are a botanical sanctuary, or a member of their botanical sanctuary network. So, which is basically dedicated to the preservation of native and medicinal plants. So we have several native and medicinal plants that are on a watch list, or not going, there's declining and not necessarily going extinct, but on that watch list. And we have several of those plants here. Golden seal, trout lily, even May apples, those kinds of native plants that are in wild ginseng, American ginseng. Those are all plants that are on the way down, right on the decline. And so we're trying to preserve them and educate how to do that here. And so we're looking at producing building a native and medicinal plant education trail, where we're going to have a name and name tag for each plant, and educate educate about them and the need to preserve them.
So that's the sanctuary part.
Yeah, that's the sanctuary.
Plant sanctuary.
It's a botanical plant sanctuary. I just say in general that we are how do I put it? A botanical wildlife and human sanctuary, where we all can come and feel safe, and and connect with ourselves and others deeper. So, do
you draw campers to you just by word of mouth? Are you on Airbnb? Does Airbnb have a camping?
Yeah. It's Hip Camp. Yeah, that's what I asked, if you knew what Hip Camp was. It's Airbnb for camping. It's just called HIP, H-I-P Camp. And it's basically a website, hipcamp.com, just like airbnb.com. And so you can just go to that website and find Buck Creek Sanctuary, and you'll see the pictures of the campsites and other people who love it, reviews, all that kind of stuff, same thing. So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you provide any, you're not providing the bed, they're providing the bed, but do you provide breakfast? Let's promote it just a little bit.
No, food was basically just rustic camping, or what do they call that? You're on your own. We basically provide water and a composting toilet, and then and then a fire ring, and we sell firewood, and as part of it, and you'll have a nice cleared area with the fire ring, and some have a little more accommodations, a table or something, but you're providing, it's wilderness or backcountry camping kind of thing at this point. So we're still just developing that, and every year we're getting, this is our second year, so we got them a little bigger, a little nicer, that kind of thing. So
can people drive right to the campsite, or do they have much of a hike to get there?
Yeah, there's one that's real close, just a small, just because there's parking just by the barn, and then it's just like 40-50 feet away, and then the Buck Creek is a good 10-minute walk, so you're hiking down the hill to the creek. But actually that's what everybody loves, that site, because of course they want to be by the water, and it's so private. I mean, it's so private and secluded, and you're there by yourself, and the creek's just flowing by. It's quite beautiful. So
very nice.
And then we have one that has a teepee on it. So I have a big size teepee that is part of the campsite. So you can camp there, you can sleep in a teepee, or you can provide your own tent, whatever, and a fire ring there. So
what's the diameter? Some of them are pretty big.
It's pretty decent size. I would say, I think it's like 16 feet. Yeah.
So 2 or 3 could sleep in it?
Yeah, definitely. And we use it mostly for circles. So, you can have a fire in there, and I have a men's circle that comes out regularly. And all through the winter when we came out, we just started the fire in the teepee and sat around inside the teepee and connected and did our
very nice
circle. So yeah, it's very sweet.
We've had a guest on that really spends a lot of time and energy coordinating circles of all types. She's in a co-living community. Talk about circles and the importance of circles.
Well, that's funny. I'm transitioning from massage into more of a coaching and experiential healing back to the land kind of thing. And I call my new business Sacred Circle Coaching. And so I've spent the last, since 1992. So it's 30 years, right? Yeah. I was initiated into the Mankind Project in 1992. So, and prior to that, it started with a men's circle and being introduced to the concept of men connecting personal growth in a circle of men, and then got into the Mankind Project and either been in a circle of men or a circle of what we call mixed circle now, which is women who have done the Women Within program and men who've done the Mankind Project initiation program. They're both kind of an initiation. And then, so I've been sitting in that circle for almost 20 years. And so to me, it's my core, it's my family, it's where I go for solace and help and support. And we meet twice a month, every 2 weeks. And of course, through this pandemic, we started doing it online instead of in person. So typically we would have met in person, and we're still doing it online, and it has been just as effective and just as connected, and it's helped us get through this time together and stay connected, I think. So for me, it's it's all about personal growth, looking at your shadow, doing shadow work, as we say, personal embodiment, embodying more of who you really are. So I've incorporated all I've learned over those 30 years and the experience of it into a coaching program that I call Sacred Circle Coaching. And I work around the Sacred Circle, which initially was the medicine wheel for me. I had a Native American teacher called Don Coyas, and who was Mohican, and he taught the medicine wheel concepts, and I became he taught basically 12 steps of the medicine wheel, and then he had us go out and teach that to others, and then he realized that was early to the early 2000s, and then he realized at some point he needed to go back to the reservation and work with his people instead of in the city with mostly white people, right? And so this whole concept of appropriation and not wanting to do that. So I had to kind of rethink and redesign what I do and how I teach that, and around a circle, right? Because we all, like I say, we all come from an indigenous culture, and all indigenous cultures, in my estimation, worked with circles, worked with seeing that the earth was a circle, and the nature and the cycles of nature. And, so that's how I work with it. I basically have a 16 stone circle, actually 17 stone, because there's one in the middle, out in the woods, and it's basically work with the elements: water, air, earth, fire, and then center, and then each stone represents a part of the human psyche. And so, can we embrace a 360 degrees of our human nature, or do we have parts of ourselves in shadow, parts of that, of our human nature that we deny, hate, don't want to look at, repress, and that kind of thing? And whatever that is, everybody has their own. So it's just a model to look at ourselves and connect deeper with ourselves, and with, like I said, with the planet and with each other. So it all comes fundamentally down to a circle, right? It's pretty awesome. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years. And now finally stepping out into the public and wanting to teach that in a more specific way and work with people. Yeah.
Very nice.
That's all part of the Buck Creek Sanctuary website. So there's a Sacred Circle coaching page on our Buck Creek Sanctuary website. So it's just buckcreeksanctuary.org. And it's just getting started. So it's bits and pieces, but you can get all our information, get on our mailing list so we don't miss any workshops. So yeah, I just did a men's workshop last month, and kind of reintroducing connecting to the land and connecting deeper with ourselves. So that went over really well. And we're going to have a foraging workshop in 2 weeks. So not this coming Saturday, but the next Saturday, which is June 24th or 25th. That Saturday, we're going to do foraging. My friend Matt is going to come out and lead a foraging and just see what's out there that's edible. We found several mushrooms, and we also have had mushroom inoculation workshops. So we just inoculated some logs last month in our workshop. So we inoculated some logs with lion's mane mushrooms, and also some wine cap, just the wood chips and wine cap mushrooms. So we've got that going on. We've got some wine caps that we inoculated with the workshop last spring, and we harvested some last fall. And now this spring, they didn't come up quite as strong a flush, but in the fall, they'll probably flush again and have a lot of mushrooms. And then we're also going to be doing a technique of permaculture called hugelkultur, building a hugelkultur garden. So we're going to do that in July. And so we'll get that on the schedule, and that'll be put out there. And that's where you basically use logs and leaves and what you have to build a raised bed garden called the hugelkultur. It's supposed to, it kind of reflects the process of the woods. So you're building it on decaying wood, and through wood chips, leaves, branches, logs, and then
what was the term? Huma?
It's a German term called hugelkultur, Hugel, and then Kultur, hugelkultur, or it's a German word. So it comes from Germany concept, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, that's one of the techniques that permaculture has adopted from Germany. So it kind of looks from indigenous or just sustainable regenerative farming techniques from around the world and kind of puts them all together. And it's like, okay, here's your toolbox. Here are all these possibilities. And then you pick and choose what fits on your land, right? So there's the 12 principles of permaculture and the kind of the 3 core values, and that kind of remain the same. And then the techniques all change depending on what you want to do, what your goals are, how you relate to the land and water, air, earth, sun, all that. So that's one of the techniques that you can use to preserve water. It holds water and moisture, and then also feeds the soil. So,
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot about that. Self-watering pots and tubs and that sort of thing, and building a bed with wood pieces and to minimize the amount of soil you have to start with initially, and have it be self-building soil.
Yeah, one of the principles of permaculture is keep water high. So the idea is, if the rain's on top of the hill, it's going to run down to the bottom of the hill really fast. But you want to keep it as high as possible. So you want to slow the water down and sink it in, spread it out and sink it in. So that's one of the techniques, is to build that. So you got swales, which is basically a ditch, on contour, which means level with the land, right? And then you dig the ditch and pile it on the downside and build a mound on the bottom side. And then you'd catch that water, fill that ditch and spread. So it's kind of almost a form of terracing down the hill to keep the water from running off. And then, like I say, slow it down and sink it in. So it's not only watering your plants and keeping the ground moist there, it's also sinking into the groundwater then, instead of running off and causing erosion. We're building the water tank, the water level, instead of depleting it, right? So it's one of my favorite techniques. And you can incorporate the hugelkultur bed into that, right? So you can dig the ditch, but then also build the mound even bigger with the hugelkultur bed, so the water gets caught in the ditch and then feeds that raised bed. So we've got a small example of that in our garden here, and which is on a slight incline. So we did that did a little bit of a swale system there. And then if you see that, it's actually, instead of being on contour, it's slightly off contour. So the water would drain down to one end and then kind of slowly overflow. And then you have another one that it fills, another swale that fills up. And then it's contoured down the other way, so it has to go down. So you got water zigzagging down and soaking in. So it's slowing down, soaking in, zigzagging down the landscape, right? Instead of rushing straight down.
Right.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time thinking about the human interaction and cooperation and conflict. Part of my background has been as a mediator of disputes for a long time. I'm not doing as much of it now, but although I am bringing it into our concept, it sounds like you're spending a lot of your mental time around the permaculture, the plant part of it. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on the human part of it and the human interaction and conflict and living together and cooperation and all those things.
Yeah, I noticed, just listened to one of your other podcasts, and I think it might have been the same woman that you had mentioned earlier, that she talked about NVC, nonviolent communication. And I'm studying nonviolent communication, incorporating that into my coaching. And that's like, it's like permaculture for humans, right? So again, you're going to start with observing. it's like instead of observing the land and how things feel, you're observing your internal landscape, right? So you're observing your feelings and your needs. I don't know how familiar you are with the NVC, but basically you're observing the feeling that comes up in whatever interaction. So you can take a step back and go inside instead of being reactionary, and observe that feeling. And then behind every feeling, from the book Marshall Rosenberg, I think, is the founder of that nonviolent communication. And he says behind every feeling, there's a need. So if you look at, if you catch yourself and can observe whatever feeling is coming up before you become reactionary, then you can observe that feeling and ask yourself, what is the need that this feeling is showing me? And then work with that need in myself. And then we can also use that same process with another person. So interpersonal communication using the NVC model, I think, is really important. So I could see that definitely as being part of, of the education of, if we're going to live together, let's work with this NVC model. And so teaching and learning the NVC model of how to interact with each other, I think it's a great one. And then there's a lot. I mean, I love the Buddhist approach. It's like the whole yoga, all that kind of incorporates, right? Becoming more aware of your body, more aware of your feelings, more aware of your thoughts, so that you don't become, so we become less reactionary and better at interpersonal communication and interaction. So, incorporating all that, right? Yeah. And then that's what the circles are about, right? Mm-hmm. So in each circle, we always start with, how am I feeling, and where is that being held in my body? I'm feeling sad in my heart, or I'm feeling scared in my stomach. I got indigestion. I got, and being able to share that with the group of people and not have to hide because I feel fear, especially as a man, right? A man can be angry and maybe happy, but not too happy.
People have asked me what the biggest challenge I anticipate in creating community. And I came upon the concept of radical acceptance. Tara Brach wrote a book about it a number of years ago. Yep. And I think that's at the root of it. Being able to be accepting of ourselves, accepting of other people, consequently. And I think that the people part of this will be the most difficult and the Absolutely. Most challenging. And being able to find people who are at a point in their development that they can not be so reactive as probably, I'm assuming, mainstream people are in this culture, and to be able to work on these things and do the hard work. And I think it's going to be too much work for some people. I think too much work for a lot of people to go through that, to have the patience. And just one other thought related to that is, I have a hunch that the reason that we live so separately in this culture and don't live together in multi-generational groups anymore, for the most part, or affinity groups, is that we are so conditioned to pass judgment that this is about as close as we can live, houses next to each other or condos, because we're so quick to judge, which separates us from each other. And I see it in my own household and with my partner, how hard it is to stay connected and not to step back, exert judgment about whatever it is.
Right.
So I see that as the biggest challenge of building community and living harmoniously. Um, the plants and the animals, I don't have any trouble with relating to my dog, for example.
Doesn't talk
we've
back.
gotten to where we've gotten to where we can communicate, and we don't push each other's buttons very often, but it's the people part that's hard. What are some of your thoughts around that?
Well, for me, I think it's the capitalist culture that thrives on separation. So as long as we can keep people separate, then we can sell them what they need. But if they build community, I mean, that's to me, that's what destroyed, capitalism, colonialism, however you want to say it, has destroyed community for its own gain, right? So that it can turn around and sell everything back to us. So it has, that's the I want to almost say wounding, or it's like, that's the culture that has been violent and caused a lot of pain and suffering in the world. And we have to overcome that and reconnect. And yes, that's going to be the hardest thing. And I think that's the goal, that's the challenge of our culture today, right? I mean, that's the ultimate challenge for humanity to get through this time, is to reconnect with ourselves, with each other, and with the planet. And it's not going to be easy because, because of the whole system is designed to separate us. And, we're supposed to buy our own houses. We're not supposed to live together. We're supposed to buy our own cars. We're not supposed to share cars. We're supposed to buy our own lawnmowers so we can mow our own lawns, not grow vegetables in our lawn. It's all designed to keep us from working together. And so that's the challenge of our culture right now. And that's what I'm dedicated to, right? I'm dedicated to reconnecting and rebuilding, and however, regenerating a healthy human culture, and not just human, a healthy earth culture.
Right.
So
when I look, to me, the epitome of this is all of these new apartment buildings that are going up in every city. These days, I'm down in the Tampa Bay area, and these multi-unit, 4 stories, 5, sometimes 5, with 4 or 5 buildings and very little common space. And if they do have a clubhouse or a pool or a fitness center, not many people, from what I gather, not very many people go there, commune, and everybody is going into their own cubby to watch their own big screen TV that we all have to have.
Right. And I'm not sure, it's like, that's not for me. It's like, I don't want that. So it's funny how mainstream for me is, I can't even see it. I don't even understand the desire to want to live that way. So, but, the majority of people do live that way, and, it's unsustainable, and it's hurting the planet and hurting ourselves. It's destructive to our own need for connection with the other humans. Yeah.
And it's back to capitalism. Right. It's back to capitalism, because that's the cheapest way that developers can pack people in and address quote unquote affordability, to cram as many people into these buildings as they can.
Right. Well, and then of course you got the other side of, the whole spread, the suburban lifestyle, which is, drive into your yard and have your own, quarter acre or whatever it would happen to be. And but it's like something has to shift, and I believe in the 100th monkey effect for one, that human consciousness makes shifts from the ground up. From what is it, Eleanor Roosevelt's quote that I can't ever remember about nothing's ever happened, changed by by people, but by the small individuals getting together and doing it. So it takes small groups of people to make that change, and then all of a sudden it can explode into something larger, a movement, and create change on the planet.
Are there some things that you've been thinking about, and especially when you're living there, and it's primarily you? I'm sure there are a lot of things, creation that goes on in your mind of the place, but are there some aspects that you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed, of what your vision is, and what you're working towards?
Well, I think we hit a lot of it. Well, one of the, I guess, more of on a spiritual level, I think I looked at my spiritual life as earth-based spirituality, and I follow the moon and the sun cycles and honor those cycles and kind of work with those cycles individually, and would like to collectively. I have in the past worked in that way. So the full moon is today, so celebrate the full moon, and maybe dance and make some commitments and honor. The moon symbolizes water. It monitors the tide, the movement of water. And so we can feel that maybe in our bodies, and the movement and the flow of the water in our bodies. So that's why we would dance, right? Water and movement, and we dance to connect with that part of ourselves, to connect with nature. And then mentally, how can we celebrate what happened this last month? It's full. So whatever the new moon coming up, we might make a commitment to, this is what we want to look at in this next new cycle. And then it comes to fruition in the full moon. Look at that, celebrate that, do that all over. And then, so that's the minor circle. And then the sun cycle is a larger of the same thing, right? We're moving into the summer solstice. So here's the fullness of the sun in the northern hemisphere. So we can celebrate that with all the life that's bursting because of the sun. So, I love working with nature and following the cycles on all levels: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So to find people that, I don't know, I guess some people might call me a granola head or something, but I find it really important that that's what we have to come back to at some level, and we can do that in a condo in the city, and you can do it out on the land. You can connect wherever we are, because we cannot, even though we think we do, we can't disconnect from the earth. Everything that's in that condo was built from something of the earth: water, air, earth, fire, took to create that. And, so you can't remove ourselves from nature, but other than in our own head and in our own concept. And that's what we have to deal with. Reworking how we approach life in our own head, in our own bodies, and then with each other. So
sure.
That's interesting.
So let's go back through some of the ways that people can communicate with you and find you if they're drawn.
Yeah.
So the website.
Yeah, buckcreeksanctuary.org. Look at Buck Creek Sanctuary on Facebook. Those are probably the two main things. And then it's just buckcreeksanctuary@gmail.com is our email address. So.
And then Sacred Circles Coaching is a page within the Buck Creek Sanctuary.
Buck Creek Sanctuary, right? Yes. So.
Yeah. And they can find you on Hip Camp. With
as well.
Your campsites,
yes. So yeah, and then reminder, just upcoming this, not this Saturday, but a week from Saturday, we'll be doing our foraging workshop. So we'll get a very good hike around the whole 58 acres and see what we have here. And then we'll finish with eating what we found, and then also, inviting people to bring something to share, potluck. And then hopefully, one of the things I really like to do to build community is what I call the front porch stage. Is we just sit out around the campfire in the front yard, and then people can come up on the stage and present themselves however they like, sing poetry, storytelling, whatever you like. So we'll incorporate that as part of it. So yeah.
And what's the date? Because the beauty of podcasts is that they live on, and they're likely to hear about it and think it's next week.
Exactly. Thank you. So it's going to be June 25th, 2022.
Got it. And you'll probably have more if they miss that one. So.
Yeah, for sure. There'll be probably another one late summer, early fall for sure. So there's every month we like to post at least something, and then just ongoing if people want to come out for their own personal tour or their own reflection time, come on out and camp and spend some time here at Buck Creek. So,
well, Ken, I really appreciate getting to know you through this podcast and having you share your thoughts and feelings and creations. So thank you so much. And let's keep this conversation going. We're starting our first community down in the Tampa Bay area where I am. But then I also have shared 30 acres with some farm partners up in your area, Milltown, Indiana, on the other side towards Evansville. And there's some thought towards building a community there as well. So let's keep the conversation going and exchange more and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to get connected with the Thrive community and co-living, learn more about you all. That'd be great. So Absolutely. Thank you so much. Awesome. Opportunity to share what's in my heart. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for another great episode of the Thrive Co-Living Communities YouTube podcast. To learn more about our mission and how you can support our vision of creating co-living communities worldwide, please visit us at thrivecolivingcommunities.org. To receive advanced viewings of our podcast and other exclusive content, find us on Patreon at patreon.com/Thrive Co-Living Communities. You can also learn more ways to support our mission in the show notes below. Amazon Smile, GoFundMe, Kroger, and our own Thrive Gear store, where you can buy t-shirts, hats, and many other items. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.